Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 25th, and right now we are looking at the mid-level water vapor loop. Check out the ridge of high pressure dominating the Pacific Northwest. Nice, clear, sunny skies this morning for much of the region. That's going to be the case here over the next few days, but we do have a pattern change on the way, and we have Arctic air that will be on the move, and it will try to make a pass towards the Pacific Northwest here, and we're going to dive into those details as we go through the video here this morning. You're not going to want to miss this. Taking a look across California as well, that storm is developing. We're putting an end to a lot of that fire danger there across Southern California. So that is nice to see. Some precipitation much needed down there. Taking a look, Mount Baker, Mount St. Helens is right there. There's Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, and there is Mount Hood. Check out the Cascades of Oregon. You can see some high clouds moving across the area, but the Rocky Mountains are showing off their snowfall as well. Vancouver Island largely clear also. Now take a look here. You can actually see some straight effect clouds moving down in the north flow, picking up a bit of moisture and pushing that into the north slope of the Olympic Mountains. Same pattern here, but the air is usually colder when it does spark the snowfall, and it will pick up some of that moisture moving across the strait and slam it into the north slope of the Olympic Mountains. If you live out there towards Port Angeles, especially up against the Olympics there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can get some nice snowfalls out of this north flow regime, but there it is. You can kind of see the clouds moving down. And there is even a lenticular kicking off across Mount Rainier here this morning as well. Might go out and shoot that later. Taking a look here, this is Fiji. I found one of these tempest weather systems in Fiji. Look at Musket Cove Resort. You can see New Zealand to the south. There's Australia to the left. I highly recommend this station. It's very fun. You can see the lightning strikes that it was picking up here a few days ago across the region as well. So if you want one of those, click on that link down below to save 10%. Now, what everybody wants to know about is what is coming up here as far as the snowflakes in your extended smartphone app. So taking a look at the European on the left versus, the hot off the presses one is on the left, the 12Z. This is yesterday afternoon's on the right. So if I put this into motion, you're going to get a lesson in deterministic model runs here as we go on through this loop, because you can see the Arctic air on the move on both models across Alaska, Northwest Territories, the Yukon, pushing down into northern British Columbia. Well, watch what happens. On this morning's, much more aggressive with the Arctic air versus yesterday afternoon's. Keeps that Arctic air largely to the east of the Rocky Mountains. So again, you can see the discrepancy between these deterministic model runs. So of course, if you've been watching this channel, you know what we have to do next is check out the ensemble mean here to try to get some better agreement. But this would be very favorable for, this would push Arctic air down into western Washington, western Oregon. This would bring measurable snowfall. This would be a very fun setup for low elevation snow levels. This one, not so much. So if we take a look at the 12Z, this is actually running now. The ensembles run after the deterministic runs, but we're going to run through this here, and you can see the Arctic air on the move, pushes down. There it goes into BC. So that's not too bad of a look here on the ensemble mean. This is an average of all 50 ensemble members, 5,000 feet, temperature anomaly. You can see that very cold air sneaking down into British Columbia, and it starts to take that short track out across western BC, Vancouver Island, and back into the Pacific Northwest here, western Washington, western Oregon. So that has an interesting look to it here as far as lower elevation snowfall is concerned. And if you see here, I'm going to back this up. You can see this Arctic air. This is only 126 hours out right there, and that's clearly entrenched across Alaska and getting down towards northern BC as we go on in towards this upcoming week. So this is not that far out. This isn't one of those 330-hour extended Arctic air fantasy runs right now. There's something to this, and we're just going to kind of monitor it there carefully over the next few days and see, if this is going to trend a little bit east of the Rockies, or if this is really going to settle down across central and southern British Columbia, just how much of this will spill out into some of the elevations west of the mountain areas. Now, if we take a look at the GFS, let's take a look at what the 12Z deterministic model run says here. And again, that is pretty favorable here. This is the GFS ensemble mean. Not quite as cold there across central BC as what the European was showing 12Z, but again, the same pattern nonetheless. If we take a look at the artificial intelligence last night's run, here's at 5,000 feet. Again, the Arctic air. So virtually every model that we've been looking at has this, and that settles down fairly well. This isn't a prime track for lower elevation snow, but that could still get it done. And you can see this would be very a cold solution here over much of the Pacific Northwest. So again, the pattern is the same. Let's look at the Canadian ensemble mean. I don't know how many ensemble members are in the Canadian. Maybe somebody can fill me in there. I've never looked into it too much. I try not to use the Canadian model too much. I find the GFS and the European to be better, but you can see the same trend does exist here on the Canadian model. A lot of that does stay east of the Rockies, though, but some of that sneaks into central BC. And again, we'll just kind of watch that trend for now. But in the meantime, before we go back to a scenario here of Arctic air, we're going to go and look at the quiet weekend weather ahead. We do have these dry conditions over the next few days, some sunny skies out there as well, and some chilly temperatures. Cold overnight temperatures expected. This is National Weather Service Portland. They do have some cold weather advisories out. Looks like the National Weather Service office there. Very good stuff. They have a chicken out there they use for some of their forecasts as well. Taking a look at Medford, they also have the cold weather advisory. Something new the National Weather Service is doing here this year. This is all relative here. You wouldn't see it for these temperatures east of the Cascades or east of the Rockies, for example. But if you click on that, you can see some wind chill values down to 5 to 15 degrees and some northeast winds, some gusts to 40 miles per hour. So again, there is that cold weather advisory. Now, also, I want to run through this really quickly here because you can see as we go through the day today, nice sunny skies out there. But if we go into Sunday morning, you see some of that patchy fog start to develop here. But for the most part, maybe some areas might not fully burn off. It depends on just how light the winds get in this regime. We go through Monday morning, you see some of that showing up across the Puget Sound, eastern Washington as well. And sometimes the models can underdo just the extent of some of these low clouds and fog. And Tuesday morning kind of look fairly foggy there for the Pacific Northwest, making its way down into the Willamette Valley also. So yeah, watch out for some of that fog out there. We'll revisit that daily as well. And daily 2-meter minimum temperature here. So let me back that up to where Sunday, you can see chilly overnight lows again. Look at this, some of the Willamette Valley down into the mid-20s here. Very chilly. Western Washington as well. Go east of the Cascades and you see some single digits and some teens showing up also. So yeah, dress warmly. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So by the time we get towards the end of the week, we're going to get that initial frontal system, which will strangely enough, warm us up a bit here, but then that Arctic air is going to try to sag south across British Columbia. More on that here in a moment. So taking a look at the 12Z European run, you know that since this run came in so hot and heavy, we are going to have some fun with it. So let's go ahead and do just that. There is the ridge of high pressure dominating the Pacific Northwest. Arctic air is on the move. There goes our polar lobe up here. What does it do on the 12Z run? Well, it drops down, as you can see. Fairly favorable location here for some lower elevation snowfall. And it's not just one shot of it as well. You can see the ridge here, strong north flow, bringing all the way down from the North Pole here, right across Pacific Northwest, additional reinforcing shot. So this would be, this would be some pretty prime stuff here for lower elevation snow lovers here across the Pacific Northwest. As you can see, there would be multiple chances for snowfall under this polar lobe as it drops down, and we keep that ridging where you want it if you want to see that lower elevation cold air back out across the Aleutians and Alaska. Strong north flow driving all the way down into the Pacific Northwest, and it will show that here on the 300 millibar jet stream height. So this is about 30,000 feet in the atmosphere. And again, the ridge is going to be with us for a few days here. So we have a ways to go before this gets in here. But as you can see, once we get towards hour 150 or so, you can see the jet stream that is potentially going to be bringing that polar low back down into the region here. And then it's going to deposit some cold air, and then additional chances after that as we go through the extended forecast. Now, we looked at this already. I'll play this through this one more chance. Again, I just kind of like to see that. Look at all that cold air just absolutely come down into the Pacific Northwest. That would be a pretty good influx of Arctic air across the region, no doubt, with, again, reinforcing shots after that. So taking a look here, and I should put the disclaimer out here already. I did mention that we're just going to have some fun with this here, but this is not a forecast. We're just going over the scenario of the 12Z European run here as we look off into the extended forecast. This is not necessarily expected to happen. We're just kind of having some fun with it and looking to see what the scenario would bring the Pacific Northwest. So this is the frontal system. Here it comes on the day Thursday. You can see it affecting western BC, Washington, Oregon. You'd get some nice mountain snows out of this as we go through the day Friday, but then there comes that Arctic air trying to sag south. How fast and furious is this going to try to move in? But by the time we get towards Saturday afternoon, things start to get interesting here across western Washington, western Oregon, southwest BC. We go on into Saturday night and into Sunday morning. Look at that. We would have convergent zone bands, lower elevation snowfall, all kinds of fun stuff. and we'd start to get some Arctic outflow here pouring off across the region here, timing up with some of these bands. And then you can kind of see that finally pushes through across Pacific Northwest, but there would be very cold air in place behind that, and then additional precipitation amounts. And I have a feeling a low like that would definitely overperform. So the 12Z run is fun. We're having some fun with it here. This is not a forecast just yet, but it's something we're definitely going to be watching and breaking down day by day as we're getting some increased confidence in some Arctic air trying to make a pass through British Columbia here. We're just not quite sure how much of that is going to get down across some of the lower elevations. So as we scroll off in here, you can kind of see the offshore light regime flow over the next few days as we get some sunny skies. Here goes the frontal system, the initial one right there. And then you can see the pattern change coming. And watch these winds. See this across British Columbia? Those are out of the north. That's that Arctic air starting to push southward. But you're getting the cyclogenesis out over the Pacific Ocean. You're swinging that back in. And then you start to merge some of these lower level convergent zone areas as you get the flow through the Fraser River Valley here. This would just be prime stuff. You would get some interesting snowfall amounts all the way down through the Puget Sound and all the way down into western Oregon under this scenario here. So you can kind of see that Fraser River outflow would be in full effect. Cold Arctic air pouring off the continent there. Now, the dew point temperature. So a lot of times I like to look at this versus regular temperature values here as far as Arctic air is concerned. And I'll show you what I mean. So you can see as we go through the next few days, it's clear, crisp, and cold. But you see the dew points here across central BC. They're not too bad. They're in the 20s at times. And as we scroll on in towards Tuesday, look at this. You got some mid-20s out there across central BC. But we start to get that frontal system move in as we go through the day. Thursday, things initially warm up a bit. Look at that dew point of 30, 32 across central BC. But can you see the Arctic air mass? Look at that. Look at these dew points just absolutely fall off a cliff there through central BC. And it sags south across southern BC and then tries to leak out into western Washington. Arctic air would lock up western Oregon for a bit as well. Very dry air. A lot of evaporational cooling potential with that once that would be in place. And then you bring another system down from the northwest, would probably bring some snowfall with it as well. But you can clearly see that Arctic air mass defined by dew point temperatures and very dry air, one of the defining characteristics of an Arctic air mass. And also the temperatures, a lot of times I don't look with this with marginal situations. I'll pay more attention to the dew point. But as we scroll in some of these overnight lows, you can see that coming up. And there goes our frontal system on Thursday. And then look at that Arctic air sag down across British Columbia. And look at some of these temperatures just really plummet down. Even the teens showing up for the Puget Sound and the Willamette Valley there. So that would be kind of a classic Arctic outbreak if this 12Z were to develop there. That's a lot of cold air pouring out west of the Cascades. So again, just kind of having fun with it right now. This is still a fantasy forecast for this individual scenario to unfold right now. But I do like that Arctic air is showing up. It's bound to bring some kind of interesting system here into the Pacific Northwest. Again, we're not just quite sure which system that'll be. If we take a look at last night's GFS, it did show an inch for SeaTac there. Some of the ensemble members do have higher amounts there as well. We'll just continue to watch that. But you see that a lot of those individual ensemble members do not have any snowfall for SeaTac. But it also shows more than one round or more than one potential for that snow. And the GFS temperatures here, you can see as we go on in towards some point of next weekend into the early portion of next week. And this could easily be pushed back a little bit here as well, depending on how fast that Arctic air moves down. But you can see some of the cooler temperatures showing up. Same thing for Spokane as well as you go on in through next weekend in towards the early portion of the following week. So we're still over a week out from the main event. If we look at the 12Z GFS, let's just go ahead and go through this just for the heck of it. We see that initial frontal system, pretty good agreement on that, some mountain snows, and then the Arctic air starts to sag south. So the GFS does have something similar and in the same time frame. It's just not quite as cold as what the European was showing, but that has the potential for some lower elevation snowfall, no doubt as well. As you can see, that Arctic boundary just kind of hung up right across southwest BC, some of that leaking out, no doubt as well. So taking a look at the experimental product, you can see they're picking up on this pattern change as well. Moderate risk for some heavy snow for the Cascades, like to see that. And it goes all the way down into California, some of the Rocky Mountains under the slight risk for moderate. And here we go, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Starting to bring that below average in here. Above average precipitation, below normal signal there as we go through the first week of February. So they're starting to pick up on the pattern there at the Climate Prediction Center as well, and above average precipitation. This is the snowpack so far. So Washington not doing too hot. We are below average so far. But that makes sense with what we've been going through over the last few days. So hopefully this pattern change starts to build back that snowfall amounts. But a lot of Oregon is doing not too bad also. But anyway, I'll wrap this video up here. What else? Click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again tomorrow. I'll be watching every single model run from now until the end of time, it seems like, or until the end of next week anyway, to see what this Arctic air is going to be doing. But we do have the increased odds of it moving down into BC. Will it spill out? Will it cause lower elevation snowfall? That is a much more uncertain question at this point. So if you see the snowflakes showing up in your smartphone apps, take it with a grain of salt here and just continue to check back daily, and we'll be breaking it down. And you'll know from me here first if things start to get a bit more interesting as we go through the extended forecast. But yeah, and again, it's not that far out. You know, the previous Arctic air intrusions here we've been watching have been 300 hours, 290 hours out, and this one is under 200 hours right now. So there's something to that as well. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, we'll do this all again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.